the Biden administration continues to push forward with its attempts to spend more money than God has ever seen. Yesterday, the Congressional Budget Office came up with an estimate of how much Joe Biden's Build Back Better plan would actually cost if it weren't filled with lies. So the Build Back Better plan was essentially altered in a pretty obviously dishonest way. They created false sunsets for programs. What they did is they said, okay, well, what if we put in place a child tax credit, but for only the next 2 years? The reason they're saying that is because if it were estimated over the next 10 years, it would cost a lot of money. So it's sort of like buying a subscription to a magazine and saying, I'm going to allow it to expire 3 years from now. But meanwhile, you know you're not going to allow it to expire 3 years from now. You know it's going to go for 10 years. Okay, that is what they're doing with Build Back Better. So Build Back Better, they set up these false sunsets they know are never going to actually apply. And then they say, well, it's only going to cost a certain amount of money. No, it's not. So CBO analyzed what exactly would the bill cost if all of these programs became permanent. And it turns out it would cost something like $4 to $5 trillion over the course of the next 10 years. And this, of course, is very bad for Jen Psaki and the White House and Joe Biden and all, because there are still Democrats in the Senate who are going to have to go home and explain to their voters why they voted for a bill that is going to increase the national debt by trillions and trillions of dollars. So Jen Psaki's immediate response was to call it fake news. Now, I'm old enough to remember when a press secretary calling things fake news was a full frontal assault on the journalistic establishment. It was a threat to freedom of the press. I'm old enough to remember when, if Donald Trump had said about the CBO that it was filled with people who were making fake analyses, that would be an attack on our institutional integrity here in the United States. Now, the Biden administration does this routinely, and everybody sort of shrugs. Here's Jen Psaki going after the CBO.
What you're talking about here is a fake CBO score that is not based on the actual bill that anybody is voting on. This was a request by Senator Graham to score a bill that is not currently being debated. And the president has conveyed very clearly, multiple times publicly, that he would like programs, if they're extended, to be paid for. That remains his commitment. But it's important to understand that when anybody raises a question about this new CBO score, it is a fake score about a bill that doesn't exist.
Oh, so it's a fake score about a bill that doesn't exist, but which would exist if you guys weren't lying about what you're doing right now. It's not an attack on the press when Democrats say it. It's not an attack on the CBO when Democrats do it. When Democrats attack the Supreme Court, it's not an institutional attack. When Democrats attack the filibuster, it's not an institutional attack. When Mitch McConnell doesn't vote on Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court, it's an institutional attack. That's the way this stupidity works. Well, the good news is Joe Manchin remains not on board with Build Back Better. Here was Joe Manchin yesterday saying, yeah, the inflation threat is real. It is not transitory. And everybody who's saying differently is lying to you.
I think it would be very transparent for the public to see exactly what they'd be getting for what we're spending for 10 years.
So you won't support it if these programs are temporary?
No, we're going to talk. We're still talking. I'm just, I'm listening to everybody, but, I'm just telling you, ask me about inflation is real. It's not transitory. It's alarming. It's going up, not down.
Joe Manchin's body language here is no, no, and no, which it should be, considering that Joe Biden is 1 million points underwater in his home state of West Virginia. If Joe Manchin wishes to retain his job, he is not going to be voting for Build Back Better. According to the New York Times, he is the most prominent Democratic holdout on Biden's $2.2 trillion social safety net, climate and tax bill. That, of course, is not the real price. It's more like $5 trillion. He cast fresh doubt on Monday on his party's plans to speed the measure through the Senate before Christmas, saying he still had grave concerns about how it would affect the economy. He said anything is possible. He said he was still engaged, but it is very unlikely that this is going to happen quickly, which means it's not going to happen at all. Once we are into an election year, nothing is going to happen here. Meanwhile, there is the real possibility of a Biden stagflation. Phil Gramm and Mike Solon writing for the Wall Street Journal. They say the White House continues to insist that inflation will soon fade away and the country will return to its pre-pandemic prosperity. But the Biden administration's regulatory agenda virtually ensures that the post-pandemic economy will be nothing like it was before. The mounting regulatory burden of Mr. Biden's executive orders, his regulators' open hostility toward America's economic system, and the return of progressive-era antitrust enforcement will stifle growth. All the ingredients will be present to turn the current inflation into stagflation. And this is right. Okay, as I've been saying before, I don't know how long the inflation is going to last before it starts to even out. What I do know is that Joe Biden is setting up a system that is going to be a low-growth system. You know who admits this? Joe Biden. His actual projections for the next decade are that we are supposed to grow for the next decade at like 1.6, 1.7% a year. That is a zero growth policy, considering inflation, even if it's at its lowest point, is going to be like 2%. So what we are talking about is an economy that is in complete comatose state. And Democrats are pushing it. According to Phil Graham and Mike Solon, America's experience with regulatory excess is recent and painful. When the subprime recession ended in mid-2009, economists predicted a strong recovery. In early 2010, the OMB projected 3.7% average real gross domestic product growth through 2016. The CBO estimated 3.3% growth for the same period. The Federal Reserve expected 3.5 to 4% through 2014. Instead, we got 2.1% from 2010 to 2016. Now Democrats are openly claiming it's going to be below 2% for the next few years. Democrats claim the nation suffered from secular stagnation, when subsequent deregulation and tax cuts revived the economy, and the Biden administration needed justification for more stimulus spending. Democrats suddenly decided Obama had not done enough to stimulate the economy. So they're going to continue to double down on all of this, and you will get people investing less in the economy. Why would you invest in an economy where the government seizes more of your money and regulates your ability to control your own business? Why would you do that? The answer is you're not going to do that. And all of this, of course, ties into the alarmism, the environmental alarmism of this administration. They're always looking for an excuse to do the thing they wanted to do anyway. So anytime something bad happens in life, this administration immediately jumps to, we need more regulation and we need more top-down control. COVID, more regulation, more top-down control. A tornado in Kentucky, more regulation, more top-down control. It's always the same solution. Okay, if you went to a doctor and no matter what symptoms you complained of, he offered you morphine, you might start to think that maybe the guy was a drug pusher. Well, that is what you've got right now. You've got a government that is offering the same solution to every problem. So either you believe that this solution really is the gold standard, the all-purpose solution, or it turns out that these people are just pushing an addictive drug of spending and regulation, regardless of the first part of the statement, regardless of the contingency. The solution is always the same. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.